Welcome. How you doing, Nate? How's everyone doing out there in YouTube and LinkedIn? Definitely glad to have you here, Nate. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. Hopefully, shed some education, some good gold nuggets out there. So, just checking on you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Can't complain.
That's
Just ready
awesome.
to nerd out and talk about getting rid of taxes.
Well, we'll nerd out and we'll have fun. So,
Yep.
what we want to do again is just kind of share education. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time, jumping on. So, how we're going to do this, we're going to just ask questions. I'm going to ask you some questions. I actually had one question that came in that's not on this slide, this deck that we created. So, we're going to ad lib where we can and just sort of relax and have some fun. We'll see if there's any questions coming in from our audience out there that are sitting in live. And again, we'll just nerd out and just have some fun. So first off, Nate, maybe just tell everyone who you are, what you do, and again, kind of shed some knowledge on that aspect of it.
Sure. My name's Nate Hare. I'm the executive VP at a company called Directed Trust Company. We work with self-directed IRAs and self-directed 401ks. Basically, what we allow people to do is use retirement accounts to buy things off of not on Wall Street. So things like real estate, rental property, land, all sorts of fun investments that our clients get to choose. And I kind of stumbled on this career by chance. I didn't even know what a self-directed IRA was, but I got right into real estate right out of college. I always had an interest in being a real estate investor, and I was buying and selling real estate for about 7-8 years. Never once did anybody tell me that I can buy real estate in an IRA and pay no taxes. So once I learned that, I became obsessed with it, and I changed my career because I just thought more people should understand this. And I was 10 years late to the game, I felt.
You and me both. It's same here. In fact, you had a jump start on me. I think I converted mine over maybe 3 years ago. So definite jump start on that. I mean, so you got interested in real estate. What got you interested in real estate?
I just think the whole adage that 95% of America's millionaires are made through real estate, and I always just liked the idea of being a real estate investor or being involved in real estate to some degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in real estate out of college, but I was always pretty good with numbers, so I ended up going to real estate school, but then ended up going and working for a mortgage company for 7 years and buying and selling real estate. I would say the traditional way with traditional financing and learning it that way. And in 2012, I was recruited by a self-directed IRA company, and then I learned that there's this whole other world of real estate investing. Started attending RIAs and figuring out, man, I was doing everything wrong. All my friends were teaching me the wrong way to do this. So I was just always interested in real estate ever since college. I wanted to get in it.
Tell us a little bit of the backstory on how you stumbled in. You said they recruited you. You also said you stumbled into self-directed IRA. Like just slight bit of that backstory.
Yeah, so I was in the mortgage business for many years. The crash came, so it kind of wiped out business where I was living at the time. So I was looking for kind of a new career move or career change, new destination change, and there was a company out in Texas that recruited me to come help them expand their offices because they knew me as a good salesperson, but I had no idea what their product was. But I was ready to move, so I picked up and moved to Houston, Texas, and started learning about this thing called a self-directed IRA and a retirement account buying real estate. And I swear, I think it took me 2 weeks to wrap my head around how it was even legal. I was just thinking, how can you buy real estate in these IRAs and pay no taxes? I just don't get it. And once I got it, it just, everything started falling in place. So I love what I do because I just get out there every day and I just teach more people about, that there's more options to your retirement accounts. I don't sell investments to anybody, but I say, hey, look, here's the things you can do with a retirement account. Here's the creative strategies you can do if you really like real estate and really set yourself up for retirement. Because unfortunately, they don't teach us how to retire in school. We got to learn it on our own.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, that's actually a perfect segue. Just really quick, so those of you who don't know who Rise Capital is, so Rise Capital is more on the investment side. So, a diversified fund. We invest in both debt and equity. Bring interested investors, again, making sure our values align with ourselves and our investors to bring them more opportunities. So that's just a little bit about Rise Rise Capital Investment. So again, perfect segue. Let's just jump into some questions, and hopefully we can share and get more education out there. So first question, the second my screen changes, is what exactly is a self-directed IRA, and how does it differ from other retirement accounts?
Good question. And there's a lot of misconceptions as to what it is. Really, self-directed IRA is nothing. It's really a marketing term. An IRA is just an individual retirement account. They were created in 1974, and they've been the same pretty much ever since then. The IRS allows us to invest through an IRA or 401k to help us save for retirement. So the beautiful thing about an IRA or 401k is when you buy and sell investments inside it, you don't have to pay taxes. What most people don't realize is that you don't have to just invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds. That's what most people invest in, but they don't know that you can invest in things like real estate, all types of real estate, commercial property, apartment buildings, private equity, cryptocurrency. I mean, the IRS actually doesn't tell us what we're allowed to invest in. They only tell us we can't invest in two things, which is life insurance contracts and collectibles. Those are the only two investments that are not allowed in an IRA. The reason why people don't know that you can invest in real estate, though, is most people have their retirement parked at like a Fidelity or Charles Schwab, where they don't sell real estate. So they're never going to suggest to you to go take your IRA outside of where they want it, because they're licensed securities brokers selling investments. And I'm not saying the stock market's bad, but when I talk to people and I go out and I speak at like local RIAs and things, people understand real estate better than they understand the stock market. I mean, stockbrokers understand the stock market, but most Americans don't really know how to make money in the stock market, I would say. But most people fundamentally understand how a rental property works. I mean, that a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, they know how that works. So I just see every day clients finally learning they can invest in things that they're more knowledgeable and comfortable about. And I'll tell you what, I mean, there's a lot of cool things you can do with an IRA. And you attach some creative real estate strategies, which I don't know if we're going to talk about that, but like buying property subject to and seller financing, all the crazy things that real estate investors like to do. You can do all of that in a retirement account, but you do it free of taxes when you do it in your retirement account.
That's awesome. That definitely. So I was on the phone maybe a half hour prior, and it sort of leads into, and you touched on it, but it leads into the other question. So they asked me the question. Well, I went to this educational seminar, and this mentor or whatever, guru, whatever they call them, mentioned that I shouldn't use a self-directed IRA. I should do a QRP. I chuckled a bit. So maybe if you can, maybe just talk through that comment, and then I break down the different investments allowed and the different types of SDIRAs.
Yeah. So a QRP is really, when you really look at it, it's really a 401k. The two major types of retirement accounts that you have out there are 401ks, employer sponsor plans, 403bs, and things like that. And then you have IRAs. IRAs are actually the largest source of America's retirement now, because usually you have an IRA when you leave a job and you move a 401k into it. So there's not much difference in how they're taxed. It just depends on, kind of, if you're working at a company and they have an employer sponsor plan for you. A lot of people start their retirement by making contributions to that 401k at that job that they have. But more and more people, as they're switching careers, are rolling those 401ks into IRAs, and they still grow tax-free or tax-deferred. They both work the same way. The difference is when you have an IRA, you have a little bit more control over it, versus if you have a 401k at a job that you work at. A lot of times you can't move that money or invest in things that you're probably more knowledgeable about. You just have to invest in the things that they have to offer you.
Maybe There's another acronym that I see a lot, and it sort of falls into exactly what you said, and maybe you can touch on it a bit. And then if you're okay with it, let me segue a bit. We actually have some attendees questions coming in. If you're okay with it, I'm gonna sort of segue away from some of our questions and dive into those questions first. But before you do that, there's another acronym that I hear flying around is EQRP. So maybe explain a little bit about that and how that can be self-directed.
It's just a marketing term. I mean, EQRP, rollover IRA. I mean, they're all, but at the end of the day, an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, a EQRP, by definition, they're tax exempt trusts. They're their own kind of living, breathing entity. And you act as the fiduciary to that trust. So it doesn't matter if it's rollover IRA, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, EQRP, those are all trusts that are tax exempt. So they help you save for retirement. Some of them just work a little bit differently on contributions. Some have higher contributions than others. A lot of times your 401ks and EQRPs will have larger contributions, but sometimes you have to be self-employed in order to make those contributions. So the way that they grow is pretty much the same, but there are different types of accounts that you can really maximize the tax-free growth. And we talk a lot about this on our education, but self-directing a self-directed Roth IRA is one of probably the greatest wealth building tools out there. If you're self-employed, a solo 401k with a Roth component, and we could talk a little bit more about that, but the Roth IRA, I think if you're an investor that can take a small amount of money and make it larger, I mean, there's nothing that can outpace tax-free growth for life. And I've got clients that own multiple rental properties in a self-directed Roth IRA or a 401k, which is similar to the EQRP, and they don't file a tax return. They take huge distributions of their real estate profit, all owned in a retirement account, and they're off the grid. They live tax-free forever. So there's a lot of marketing terms of the different types of accounts, but ultimately they all kind of work the same, and they can all be invested in the same things.
Thank you for the clarification there. Okay, so a few of the questions from our audience. I have a solo 401k. Can I invest in my own? I'm assuming this is deal. Can I invest in my own deal?
So the IRS is not concerned about what you invest in, but when you look at the rules, they're more concerned with who you invest with. Anytime you have an IRA or a 401k, and it's supposed to be an investment vehicle for your retirement, the IRS wants your investments in your IRA to be at arm's length from you. So anytime I'm going to take money out of my IRA to fund my own deals, that's a distribution. The IRS doesn't allow you to tell your IRA to make investments to you or buy your own property. So you can't self-deal with your IRA. That's basically the main rule that you have to stay away from. It will result in what's called a prohibited transaction. But most people understand that. I mean, if you use it right, you can build tax-free wealth, but you have to use it as an investment vehicle. You can't use it to buy your own stuff from you.
I think you need to clarify that a bit more. And people, I think oftentimes when I have the discussion, they confuse the fact that your IRA is buying it versus you are buying it.
Right.
So I think if their IRA buys it, in their mind, it's their property and they're buying it. So maybe give a little bit more context around that too. Like, what is the easiest and most simple way to just identify that?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people get confused because they think that the assets in their IRA are their assets. Really, the IRA is a trust. It owns the assets until you take a distribution. So when your IRA goes and buys stock, your IRA owns the stock, not you. When your IRA goes and buys real estate, the IRA owns the real estate. Whether you own it directly, where the IRA is listed on the warranty deed as the owner, or you do it through some sort of entity, but you're not the owner of anything in your retirement account. You don't own it. The only time you take benefit from your IRA's investment is when you take distributions, and that's when it becomes yours.
Okay, next question. SDIRA being used for real estate. Oh boy. I cannot read this right. I'm going to skip to the next question because I can't read the writing. Is it worth converting a traditional rollover IRA to Roth so it has time to grow tax-free?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other questions you would want to ask for that. But I would probably say, I mean, you got two main IRAs, traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. And for people that don't know the difference, they're just taxed differently. Most people have a traditional IRA because most people, I would say, are trying to save for retirement. They're putting contributions into their traditional IRA and they're taking a tax deduction on the contributions. So you get the tax benefit on the way in, but ultimately what you do is you pay tax when you take the money out as a distribution. So, but if I'm an investor and I'm going to take a small amount of money that I put in there and grow it, I would rather pay tax on the seed than the big money tree that I'm going to grow it into. So I think what it ultimately comes down to is, what type of investor are you? What are you investing in? That's always going to make the determining factor as to whether or not the Roth IRA is going to be best suited for you or a traditional IRA. But if you're going to grow massive amounts of money and you're a creative real estate investor, I mean, the Roth IRA is definitely the way to go for long-term wealth for a couple different reasons. When you have assets in a Roth IRA, once you meet two criteria, you're 59 and a half years old and you've had the Roth IRA open for 5 years, every distribution you take from that Roth IRA for the rest of your life is called a qualified distribution, meaning no taxes, no penalties for the rest of your life. So if you apply real estate as the asset in a Roth IRA, if you think about it, real estate appreciates over time, which is good. It also has multiple income streams through rents. So I'll just give you a quick snapshot. I have a client that owns 12 rental properties, all purchased through his self-directed Roth IRA. He's had the Roth IRA for 5 years. All the properties are not owned by him. They're owned by his Roth. But around the 1st to the 5th of the month, he has 12 rent checks that are coming into his Roth IRA from the renters that he gets to take tax-free and penalty-free as a qualified distribution from his Roth IRA every single month. And this is in retirement, no tax return, no nothing. So he takes a $15,000, $20,000 distribution every single month. And here's the funny thing. His IRA value goes up every year because he's not touching any of the principal balance of the assets. The assets are just homes that are appreciating over time. So you never have to pay taxes. You can live tax-free in retirement, and it even gets better. When you die, your Roth IRA turns it into an inherited Roth IRA. And inherited Roth IRAs get to live tax-free to your beneficiaries for another 10 years. So talk about leaving legacy to your kids or your grandkids. Leave them 12 rental properties cash flowing in a inherited Roth IRA that they'll never have to pay taxes on for 10 years. I mean, that's legacy right there.
That's awesome. So we do have a ton of questions coming in, and exactly what we talked about earlier. I think as we ask questions, more questions will roll in. So it's awesome. So we have one from LinkedIn. Can you roll over your employer-sponsored 401k into a SDIRA?
Great question. I just had a conversation with someone about that earlier today, and they were so surprised that their company said yes. So here's the kind of,
I had the same thing.
Yeah. So with employer-sponsored plans, if you have a 401k at the job you currently work at, you just have to ask them if they'll let you roll money out. Now, don't get shocked if they tell you no. Most companies will not let you roll money out of your 401k while you're still employed. Sometimes they will if you're fully vested and you've worked there for 10 plus years and you're above a certain age. Sometimes the plan documents will allow you to roll some of the money out. But I mean, don't get your heart broken if they say no, because most of the time that is the answer. Now, when you leave the company though, and you roll that 401k into an IRA, you can roll it into an IRA at Fidelity or an IRA at Directed IRA. You really have more control over what you can do with it. But unfortunately, when you're still working at a company, sometimes it's up to them whether you can move that money or not.
Yep. Okay, next question. Can you buy life insurance from your SDIRA?
Well, life insurance contracts you cannot buy. So that's one of the two restrictions, life insurance contracts and collectibles. But that's really it. I mean, everything else is fair game. Generally, as a rule of thumb, if there's an investment that you can drop a purchase contract to buy and have it deeded or have ownership of record, the owner can be your retirement account outside of life insurance contracts and collectibles.
Is there an income threshold for Roth SDIRA?
So good question. There are income limits on making contributions to a Roth IRA. Now, when I first heard this, I always go like against the grain when I hear something. You know, when like 90% of the crowd is going one way, I always like want to go the other way. I don't know what it is about me that does that. But
Smart man right there.
right, but when I heard that they had income limits on Roth IRAs for making contributions, I thought, well, wow, that must mean I want a Roth IRA, because if they don't want, six-figure income earners to have a Roth IRA, there must be something really good about it. So there are income limits on making contributions to a Roth. That's taking money out of your pocket and putting it into the account in a Roth IRA. It's roughly six figures. It's a healthy six-figure income. If you make above the income limit, about 190,000, you cannot make a contribution to a Roth. But they changed the rules back in 2010, where if anybody making above the income limit to make a contribution to a Roth, we call it the backdoor Roth IRA. It's been around since 2010. There's no income limit to make a contribution to a traditional IRA. And in 2010, they took the income limit off conversions, which is just taking money from your traditional IRA and just moving it to your Roth. So nowadays, anybody can have a Roth IRA. If you make too much money to make a contribution directly, you just have to do it in two steps. Put money in a traditional and then convert it to a Roth.
Okay, hopefully I caught all of the questions from our audience so far. So kind of going back into slides, maybe talk a little bit about some of the risks and benefits of an SDIRA.
So I think the main risk is just, understanding what you're investing in. I think that's one thing that prevents people from self-directing, because not everybody is out looking for deals, So with a self-directed IRA, you always got to remember that it's going to sit there until you tell us what to invest in. We don't have investment products that we sell our clients. It's completely self-directed. You have to tell us what you want to own in your retirement account, and then we'll go buy it with you with your retirement account. But I think the main thing is people don't realize how important due diligence is. You have to do your own due diligence on the investment. We're not going to do it for you with the self-directed IRA. We're just going to say, cool, well, here's the documents we need if you want to buy that house, and here's what you need to sign. But we're not going to approve or disapprove your investment. So you really just have to understand what you're investing in. And if you understand it and you're good at due diligence, or you've got a network of people that can help you analyze deals, then you're good. But I do see people mess up and invest in deals they probably shouldn't have because, their brother told them to do it or something like that. So you just got to be careful, because you know who to blame if things go wrong. It's you if the investment goes bad.
Right. Perfect. Sorry, one more question did come in from our audience. The SDIRA being used for real estate, is that allowed under IRS rules and publications?
Yep. It is allowed, just like everything else. So again, they don't tell us what we can invest in. They only list life insurance contracts and collectibles as a disallowed investment or prohibited investment. So some of the investments I see, because it's not all real estate. I actually do private lending out of my IRA. I lend my money to real estate investors. So my IRA is a bank at the end of the day. It owns the notes secured by property, and those notes get interest income tax-free every first of the month. That's actually a strategy a lot of our clients like to do too, because they might not have the skill set to go find property, but they know some real estate investors maybe at their local RIA, and they just leverage the talent of local real estate investors and make money like a bank. So I deal with no toilets, no tenants, but I make money in real estate. So yeah, there's all sorts of cool things that you can do with an IRA. But again, the IRS doesn't really care about what we invest in. They more care about who we invest with. And as long as you're not self-dealing, you're pretty much good.
But just out of maybe get your perspective, because this is the same conversation I had roughly about 30 minutes ago. Is there any reason for you to believe that the IRS would ever change the rule to disallow real estate transactions?
No, I mean, I've been around long enough where I've seen, some of the things that they always throw some things in legislation, and you go, makes you think. A lot of it doesn't ever pass, but never once have they ever even tinkered with the idea of not allowing real estate. The only things that the IRS really, I would say, has a has their radar on is, again, the Roth IRA. People that have exorbitant Roth IRAs, and we can all thank Peter Thiel for that. I don't know if you guys know the story with Peter Thiel, but he used a self-directed IRA to invest in
and made billions of dollars.
Yeah, $5 billion Roth IRA. So yeah, a $5 billion Roth IRA is not a friend of the IRS. They don't like accounts at that size that they can't touch. So they always tinker with like putting caps on how much you can make in a Roth IRA. Again, it just tells you that you want a Roth IRA if they're trying to cap you on how much you can make in it.
That makes sense. Okay, I think I'm caught up on all the questions so far. Oh no, sorry, one more just came in. Can you speak a little bit about UBIT and maybe UDFI?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you want to go down that hole.
So somebody asked the question, so someone is somewhat educated and has the right questions to ask.
No, it's a good question, and I love actually talking about it. I just don't like to lose people who are just learning about self-directed IRAs, because it kind of sounds like a dangerous thing. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. I'll just kind of simplify it for you. IRAs and 401ks can use leverage, which is another cool thing that I like to talk about with self-directed IRAs. You don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars in your retirement account to go buy real estate. Your IRA can be a borrower. There's actually banks out there that have loans that they will give to IRAs. There's also other creative strategies too, buying property with seller financing or buying property subject to. Those are all kind of examples of an IRA. If an IRA was being the buyer and they're using that strategy, you're basically using leverage. But when you do those kind of strategies with an IRA, the IRS says if your IRA didn't make 100% of the investment, it used some debt to help it buy the property, then you have to pay tax on the debt. It's not the end of the world. It just means that you've got to pay tax if your IRA borrows money to buy real estate. In a 401k, though, there's an exemption to that tax, which is, there's a lot of ways around the tax. So people always they always start backing up, because when I say tax, it's like, no, tax, first of all, you're only taxed if you're making money. So taxes aren't the end of the world. And I know people like to invest in their IRAs to escape tax, but if you can use debt responsibly, I've seen a lot of people take small IRAs and buy property debt leverage, getting financing from a bank. And you look at their cash on cash return, the cash on cash return is way higher than if they would have bought all cash. So even after paying the tax. So the tax on an IRA, it's called unrelated business income tax, or UBIT for short. It only affects IRAs. It doesn't affect 401ks if you're buying real estate, but it's manageable. It's just like any other tax. There's taxes, but then there's ways to manage it and minimize it and even eliminate it if you play your cards right.
Thank you. That's awesome. And thank you for answering. I know we went slightly down a rabbit hole there, but I'm just trying to appease the audience.
Yeah, I try to keep that as basic as possible, because I can get real technical on it.
You summarized that. You summarized that very well. It's not something that you should be concerned with to stop you in any means, because exactly what you said, when you take on leverage, I mean, you have to understand the financial aspect of it, but typically when you take it on leverage, you're typically going to get a higher return on the investments that you make. So,
I mean, I'll give you a real story. I have a client that had a $70,000 rollover IRA from his old job at Motorola. He left Motorola and he went full-time real estate investor, and he's in his 50s. So $70,000 to someone in the 50s is not very, very much to retire on. So he knew he had to get, a little bit more aggressive and start paying attention to it. So he converted his rollover IRA to a Roth self-directed IRA. And basically what he did with $70,000 is he went out and he bought 5 properties subject to the underlying financing. So these properties had no equity in them. That's why he was able to get them. But he was picking up properties at $10,000, $15,000 because there was already financing on it. Now he's just holding these properties in his Roth IRA, all 5, and the tenants are paying off the note. So this tax, when it comes to your UBIT on capital gains tax, if you hold the properties all the way until the note's paid off, and you don't sell the properties for 12 months after the note's paid off, and there's no debt in the last 12 months before you sell it, you pay 0 capital gains tax. So you could still, if you're holding property, it makes sense to get debt, because he wouldn't have been able to buy 5 properties all cash with $70,000. And these properties are in Austin, Texas.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but yeah, so when these
Good choice.
property, in 10 years, all 5 properties will be owned free and clear by the renters paying off the notes. And I mean, what's the average property in Austin, Texas going to go for in 10 years? Like 700,000-800,000. So he basically took a $70,000 IRA, bought property with debt. He'll still pay no capital gains tax, but he'll have a $4 or $5 million Roth IRA by the time he's 59 and a half.
Absolutely. And perfect. I think that's a perfect illustration of the power that you're able to use when you're taking on extra debt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one.
It's a math problem.
It is, yes.
It's a math problem.
Yes. Real estate, that's almost what it boils down to. So let's kind of go back to basics a bit more. Are there any common early mistakes to avoid when starting an SDIRA?
I would say, if you're getting into real estate, just understanding the process that your custodian plays. The custodian would be us. So anytime that your IRA is going to, let's just say, go buy real estate, like a rental property, what you always have to remember is that all the money has to go in and out of the IRA. When you have to pay property taxes on that property that your IRA owns, we're not handing you the money to go pay the property taxes, because that would be a distribution. In most cases, you would request us to pay the property taxes, and we would pay the county assessor directly. Also, the rents have to go back, or the rents and any income have to go back to your IRA. That's where you want it to go back, because it's not taxed in there. So some people just, if they're too new, sometimes they think, oh, I thought I could keep those rents. No, it's not your property. Like you want the income to go in and out of the IRA, and that's what we do as a service. Is we pay bills, we collect checks, and you always have to work through a custodian, even if you work buy real estate.
Awesome. Okay, what are the most important IRS rules governing? You touched on some of this, governing SDIRAs that every investor should know.
Yeah. So the main thing is just the people. There's certain people that your IRA and 401k cannot transact with, and there are a specific list of family members. If I'm talking about my IRA cannot buy things or sell things from myself, my spouse, my lineal ascendants, which would be parents and grandparents, lineal descendants, which are kids and grandkids, and their spouses, and any companies those same people own or control or manage. So it's me, spouse, up the line, down the line, and their companies. Now, some people say, well, what about brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews? In the eyes of the IRS, that's family to the side. The reason why they prohibit spouses and lineage from transacting with the IRA is when you pass, those are usually the people that inherit your IRA. Usually don't pass your IRA or 401k to your brother over your wife. So if they're going to ultimately inherit the IRA, they're also considered prohibited to the IRA, which just means you can't self-deal with those people. So those are kind of the main things. Is just you can't buy your own stuff. You can't lend to your son. You can't lend to your mother. You can lend to your brother, though. You can buy property from your brother, or buy property from actually your in-laws, which is kind of a weird one. But just understanding the people that your IRA cannot do business with, that's the main thing with self-directed IRAs.
And that's an interesting way to put it. I've known who the prohibited transaction, the individuals were. I never really stopped to think about why it's set up that way, but that makes a whole lot of sense. And that kind of covers the next question we have here. So I'll skip over to the next one. I don't believe we had any more questions from our audience. So how can investors leverage SDIRAs to achieve diversification in their retirement portfolio? And obviously you touched a bit on it. You even give us an example, but maybe just throw in a few more examples.
Yeah. So I always tell people, we don't give tax, legal, or investment advice, but what I tell people is just invest in what you know and understand best, because investing is always going to have its own sets of risk. The best way to minimize your risk and make better returns is just investing in the things that you know and understand. So if that's real estate, then yeah, awesome. Invest more of your retirement in real estate. There's still some benefits to diversifying and having, not having all your eggs in one basket, I would say. But if you're going to leverage self-directed IRAs, just stay in your wheelhouse, I would say. Oftentimes I see some investors kind of get out of their wheelhouse, and that's what kind of messes up their retirement portfolio. Because again, we're not going to tell you your investment's bad or otherwise, but I often see it when people are comfortable with single family, and then they try to move to like commercial property in their retirement account, and they're not familiar with investing in commercial property. So I would just say, just invest in what you know and understand. You don't have, and you don't have to hit home runs. I mean, base hits and doubles score runs too. So you just have to be methodical. You have to make sure that you're actively looking for investments with a self-directed IRA. I think that's one thing that people, forget. And investing in, I would say there's a lot of different strategies that you can use. And if anyone wants to go, I have a class, a workshop on our YouTube channel called Big Profit Real Estate Deals and Small IRAs. If people want to watch that, I think they'll get a lot of use out of it. But it talks about all the creative strategies that real estate investors can use to help exponentially grow the value of their IRA, and the tax benefits to doing that in like a Roth IRA or even a health savings account. So basically, rule of thumb is any strategy fits in an IRA. You just have to make sure the IRA is the borrower. So buying property subject to, allowable. Buying property with seller financing, allowable. Wholesaling, allowable. Real estate options. It's really, the options are endless. Just stick to what you're comfortable with, and I would say don't try to get too crazy.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I think it's great advice as well. Okay. Could you, sorry, we had another question coming in. Could you maybe repeat that YouTube or the class that you mentioned?
Yeah. So if you go to YouTube and search @Directed IRA, that's our tag title, Directed IRA, and it's called Big Profit Real Estate Strategies in Small IRAs. There's a couple other classes there too that people might like. I do one on notes secured by real estate. So I talk about private lending in an IRA, private borrowing. But I think for real estate investors, I found that at the local RIAs and things, they really like that creative real estate strategy one, because it's really up their alley with the things that they're doing and how they're negotiating deals and trying to, get creative with their own deals. Don't forget about your IRA. And I'll say this, your IRA grows long-term, and it's for wealth building. It's not for making money today. So it actually enables you to broaden your horizon when it comes to real estate, because the real estate that you buy personally doesn't have to be the same real estate you buy in your IRA. Perfect example is my client that owns the 5 rental properties. I mean, those are properties that people passed on because they had no equity, because the investors that were just looking at how do I make money on this today were passing on it. He was looking at it for his retirement account and saying, I don't care if there's equity in it. I just want to make sure it's in a good area that the rents will cover the mortgage, and I'll just put those investments on the shelf and just keep them in my IRA. So he didn't even want to buy them personally because it wasn't making him money today, but it was a long-term play. So you always got to remember that you don't have to do the same deals. You don't have to be a one-trick pony. Sometimes longer deals that take a little time actually fit better in an IRA. So don't pass on those deals, I would say, and do some of the deals that put food on the table quickly. Maybe do those outside of the IRA if you're doing both.
Okay, because we had a bunch of questions coming from our audience, which is always awesome. I love the participation there. The rest of the questions were actually already answered. So let me kind of just skip through. And if you had some advice for, just someone who's just starting, understanding what a SDIRA is, understanding how to transact, what not to transact, maybe just give a few more pointers that can kind of help the audience kind of navigate the world of retirement, what to do, what not to do.
I would say just education. I mean, self-directed IRAs is definitely one of those things where, you say you don't know what you don't know. So I would probably say most people that hear about self-directed IRAs for the first time, it takes them like a good 6 months to finally pull the trigger and actually start one. So don't feel like you have to rush into it by any means, but there's tons of education out there on it. We do a ton of education. We do podcasts, we have workshops, we have webinars, because for us, we feel like educated clients are better clients for us, because we're only as good as our clients are as investors. So, and we can't sell them investments. So we try to provide them as much education as possible. And there's so much to learn on it too. I mean, there's accounts that aren't even retirement accounts that you can self-direct that I love talking about, like health savings accounts and education savings accounts for your kids. I mean, those are accounts that can be self-directed, but you actually can use the money today to pay for your health expenses for your family and education expenses for your kids or your grandkids with completely tax-free money. So on that same class, I think I included a case study where I had a client he had 4 kids, 4 girls that all went to private school, and private school was, I mean, it's not cheap. So he was, and he was in a high tax bracket. So he was trying to, make more money to pay more taxes, to pay more private school expenses, when he just learned about our Coverdell education savings account that can be self-directed. And he did one wholesale deal with each of the Coverdell education accounts as the buyers. So he found the deal, but he funded 4 ESAs that grow tax-free. He only put $500 total in all the accounts, $125 in all 4 accounts. That was as much money as he put in there. And then he wholesaled the contract for $40,000 8 weeks later. And all that profit went back to the Coverdell education accounts, and they're not taxed. So all he did was take a deal he was going to do anyways, but instead of doing it in his name or his LLC name, where he loses half of it to taxes, he just did it in another name in his daughter's Coverdell education savings accounts, and basically paid for full years of school for each of his 4 girls with 8 weeks of work and $500.
That's absolutely amazing. Okay, I did lie. Hopefully we have some time for a few more questions. I think there's 2 more questions that came in. If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you make a contribution to your SDIRA IRA from your personal account? And then how about an LLC?
So yes, you can make contributions from really any account. Contributions are the same with a self-directed IRA than as an IRA, because again, self-directed is just a marketing term. So you can make contributions. We're actually in a cool time of the year because we're getting to the first of the year. So you can always make this year's contributions all the way until tax filing deadline, so April 15th. But then once we hit January 1st, you can make 2024 contributions. So we're entering in a year where people are, putting more money into their accounts through contribution. And you might need that because depending on what you're investing in, you might need that capital in there if you're self-directing. And then what was the other question? I forgot what the last part of that.
Was just, I mean, you sort of answered it, but structured from an LLC.
Oh, okay. So we actually do set up a lot of LLCs, IRA-owned LLCs for our clients. I would say research it, though. Make sure it's something that you want and need, because there's a lot of misconception out there that you have to have an LLC in order for your IRA to buy property, and that's absolutely not true. But it does help in some cases to have your IRA own an LLC that owns the property versus your IRA just own the property directly. But it's a little bit different than you would think, because it's not about asset protection per se, because your IRA already is an entity. It's a trust. So you're not liable in most cases for what happens in your IRA. So clients that are setting up these IRA-owned LLCs that buy real estate aren't really doing it for the added asset protection, but they're doing it for ease of use. They want to be able to have access to a bank account that they can just write checks out of, that they're just the manager of the LLC, but their IRA owns the LLC. It also helps if you're partnering IRAs together. I just had a call with a gentleman this morning. He's got a business partner, and they want to partner each of their Roth IRAs on some rental properties in Charlotte. So they want to set up an LLC just so they can have a joint checking account with both IRAs funding the checking account, and then they can go out and make the investments on their own. It's still an IRA investment, but they have a little bit more access to the funds. I will say this though: you still got to be responsible. Just because the money's in your hands doesn't mean you get to go pay for your own stuff and go to Vegas on that bank account. You still have to use it for the investment purposes of the IRA. And when you're done with that LLC, all the money has to flow back to the IRA before you take a distribution. You can't take money out of the LLC bank account to yourself.
Awesome. Okay. Can you speak to a qualified income trust in relationship to income in the SDIRA?
A qualified income trust? I'm not quite sure what they're referring to on that.
Yeah, I know where the question came from. I told him I'm not 100% sure. I can get an attorney that can probably help them, but I
Okay.
also told him I would ask the question anyway. So, okay, last question. We have one more coming from LinkedIn. What are the benefits of investing in private? I'm assuming this is private equity, or
Mhm.
maybe it says private investments, including real estate in SDIRA, when considering Roth IRA conversions.
So, I mean, when it comes to conversions, really what you're doing on a conversion is you're just deciding to pay the taxes on your retirement asset cash now instead of later, which oftentimes makes a lot of sense. If you've got time to invest, it probably makes more sense to invest through a Roth IRA tax-free, or it could just be that your investment's going to be a really good investment. I've seen people do conversions in their 80s just because the taxes to convert were, say, 30%, but the investment was going to make 50. So again, it's a math problem. Sometimes it makes more sense to convert. But I would probably say, with real estate especially, that's why we see so many Roth conversions with real estate, because you've got multiple income streams. You don't have multiple income streams when you buy a stock. You just have to hope it goes up in value. Well, real estate pretty much always goes up in value. So you've got that, especially if you hold it for a long enough period of time. But if you're renting it out, if it's an investment property, it's got rents, and rents go up every single year. So and the price of the price of the home that you bought it at, it doesn't change. So if you think about it that way, your yield or your return on investment usually goes up every single year, and it increases when you buy real estate. And so obviously, if you're going to have those types of investments, it makes more sense to not pay taxes on the income and on the profit. Plus the things that I mentioned earlier with the whole legacy thing, leaving taxes, paying taxes now versus paying it later seems to work really well, especially when we're talking about real estate, just because of the fact that there's multiple income streams and you can leave a legacy with those assets to your kids or grandkids.
I just, again, thank you so much for all this gold nuggets. I mean, I've definitely learned a few things here as well. Thank you for kind of just giving us your knowledge. I mean, just tell the audience out there, if they're interested, maybe they have an IRA and they want to now self-directed, how can they get a hold of you? Aside from the QR code that's up on the screen,
Yeah, I was going to
how
say,
can they get a
yeah.
hold of you?
Well, you just go to our website. The website's directedira.com. We've got a ton of education there. If you want to book a call with me, you can. And I would say join our newsletter. We send a newsletter out every week. We don't try to sell you a bunch of stuff. Really, our newsletter is just an education piece. It tells you what our next workshops are going to be, what our next webinar is going to be. And we do a lot of education, like for small business owners, for real estate investors. Basically, we're just trying to teach people how to not make more money, but just keep more money. And sometimes that's kind of overlooked as the easiest way to get to retirement. Is you don't have to wear yourself out and try to figure out how to make more money. Sometimes it's easier to just figure out how to keep more money. And these self-directed IRAs and 401ks and HSAs let you keep more money because Uncle Sam can't get his hands on it.
It's definitely beautiful when you can do both.
Yeah, exactly. And both is even better. Yep.
Yes, you hit it out of the park there. Okay, so again, everybody, Nate, again, much mahalos for jumping on. We definitely appreciate you coming on and spending your evening with us and the rest of our audience. You guys now know how to get a hold of Nate. Again, you guys can easily just scan each one of those QR codes. The one on the top will take you directly to Directed IRA's website. The one on the bottom will take you to Rise's website, where you can learn a little bit more about Rise. And we're here to do the exact same thing Nate just said, just to be able to share and give education. The more education you can get, the more informed decisions you can make to better yourself, your life. And that's what we're all trying to do here. So again, Nate, appreciate you spending the time, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing more with you guys in the future. So thanks for inviting me.
All right. You have a great night. And everyone else out there, you guys have a great night as well.